If you are interviewing for a teaching position, I have 7 really helpful ideas for you to help you in that process. Welcome to the Efficiency and Organization channel. My name is Rosanna Hernandez. I am a public school assistant principal, a former classroom teacher, and this site where I talk about a lot of things having to do with having good organized processes, good planning, good strategies to be able to accomplish a lot in your life. As a former teacher and as a current administrator, where I interview a lot of people for classified and for positions with teaching, I wanted to give you some pieces of advice that will tremendously help you. So the first advice you might think is common sense, but I've seen this with a lot of people. It has to do with smiling and having warm facial expressions, okay? So we have interviewed people at my job as an administrator many times where they're just very solemn and they're very serious and they're looking like they're not really interested, and yet they're interviewing. So just be careful with that. Be very mindful of that. So I think for me, I kind of have like a mad face. Like typically, especially when I'm focused, like, like you'll see in my face, like up here especially, like I just tend to look very serious. And that's like okay. But it could also be that maybe people see me as unapproachable. So over the years, I've really had to like make an extra effort to like kind of, like just make my face look a little bit nicer, if you will. So because you're going to deal with students as a teacher, you don't want to come off too serious in the interview. Be real, be yourself, but understand that the panel wants to see energy. The panel wants to see kindness. The panel wants to see somewhat of a smile. Like they want to see you and how you would react or interact with parents, students, administrators. If they think right from like the get-go, you have like that appearance that you're kind of upset or mad, even though you're not, then guess what? They're going to think that that's how you're going to be down the line when you join their team. And that how is that going to be with the climate, the overall climate? Second tip is stick to the main points of the questions that they ask you. Do not ramble, do not ramble, do not ramble. Okay, here's why. The panel is writing the key things that you say that will help them to give you high points. See, a lot of the interview questions are based on points because in public education especially, they're all equal opportunity employers, and so they have to write answers, your answers, the other one's answers, the other one's answers, and compare them. Stick to key words. Once you've given like that key statement, stop explaining. Maybe one example and you're done. Here's an example. The question might be, what do you do with discipline? How do you approach discipline? Keywords. Number 1, I use a proactive approach. I make sure I go over the rules and guidelines with the students in advance. Number 2, I make sure I develop a relationship with the student. That way, if there's a problem, we can address it and have an understanding. And number 3, I will make sure I have the parent involved in the process. So if there is an issue, they can help me and we can work as a team to resolve it. Done. That's what they want. You mentioned parent, you mentioned that you're going to be proactive, you mentioned class rules, developing relationship. Look at that. That's all the stuff those are the phrases they write down to give you the highest marks. Somewhere in the interview, if they don't ask at the very end, when they say, do you have anything you want to add? Make sure you throw something in about classroom management, that you use a proactive approach. Okay, that goes a long way with administrators. So they want to know that you don't just wait for things to happen. You try to make sure that you set things, processes and systems in an organized way. You have things in your classroom to make sure the class is managed really well, so that way instruction can occur. Because if there's chaos, instruction will not and cannot occur. So just make sure you say, I take a very good stance, I develop relationships with the kids, and then that way I have a good system in place for classroom management. We all get along and we all learn together. Next is communicating with parents. Make sure at some point to say that you do frequently communicate with parents. You send like a weekly or bi-weekly newsletter or an email to let them know what's happening. You are very good about entering grades in your grade book, so that way they're knowledgeable. They have like on the spot information on how their child is doing. So make sure you say something about consistent and good communication with parents. Mention something about data-driven instruction. Data-driven instruction. This means I look at my grades, I see how they're doing, and then I have to alter my instruction to make sure I'm meeting the needs of my students. I look at my students' demographics. I make sure I understand who my EL students are, who my SPED students are, GATE students are, so that way I can differentiate instruction. Another key phrase, okay? I look at data and then I make decisions. When I give quizzes and tests, I don't just do it just to enter a grade. That's not what it's about. I go back and review to see what the most missed questions were, so that way if there's one that I see stands out, I could go over it with the kids and I could reteach. You can also, if I were you, throw in Google Forms or Microsoft Excel, and if you don't know how to use those programs, learn how to use those programs, the very basics on even using a program on YouTube or like using videos from YouTube. It will help go a long way, because a lot of teachers, when they go and get like especially liberal arts degrees, unfortunately in the college programs, they don't teach them how to use Excel, but it's such a great tool. Google Forms is such a great tool to analyze data. And that will also help you when one day you decide to go be an administrator. So just make sure that you mention that, even if you're learning, tell them. Say, I'm currently in the process of learning more about Excel so I can get even better at analyzing data. It'll really help to stand you out of the crowd. Talk about building relationships, not just with the students, but also with the other teachers in your department. You want to follow what they're doing. You want to see what you can contribute. Good communication with parents is important, with district, as well as with your administrators. And lastly, be very careful with your attire and your overall appearance and hygiene. It does go a long way. So if you show up to an interview and you're wearing Crocs or you're wearing leggings, that might not be seen as, it might just come off as if this person doesn't really care. Whereas if you put a little bit of effort, then it shows, oh, this person really wants the job. Okay, it does go a long way with the panel. Side note, okay, this is a bonus suggestion. Do not mention family. Do not mention that you're a single mom if that's what you are. Do not mention marriage, nothing like that, okay? That's your personal life, because you don't know who the panel is. You don't know how they feel about certain things. That's just the life and that's just the world we live in. Just keep it to the interview questions. If they ask you to talk about yourself, that's usually how it starts. The very first questions is tell us about yourself. Stick to the professional things, okay? So I went to college, got a degree in this. Then I have some teaching experience during that time, volunteering, working with kids. I have experience in the classroom. I have experience subbing. I love working with kids. So do not mention that you have kids of your own. Just talk about the fact that you know how to deal with kids, okay? Or you know how to deal with adult learners if you're going to be teaching adult education classes. I hope you found this video very useful and helpful. I would highly recommend you subscribe, and also go on efficiencyandorganization.com, subscribe there, because there's also very helpful content there. And just subscribe on both, so that way you could be in the know. Every 2 weeks I send out the latest and greatest pieces of information, and just like this video is helping you, that content will help you. All future videos will help you. Until next time, I'll catch you in the next video.